Hey guys, it's Barrett with the Gimpy Camper. So I just wanted to go over another DIY thing that we done this last month that's really been beneficial for us in our situation, and that's adding some blink cameras to the camper. I really like the extra security. I don't keep the camper at my house, I keep it at my neighbor's house and I can't see it from where I am. And I have a lot of decently expensive stuff in this thing. And I've had the Blink doorbell on for a while and it's been working great. And we have one camera that's on my neighbor's shed that looks at the whole camper. And that works out great because we have solar to keep our batteries charged and we have always on internet service. With our Instant Connect and our FirstNet, we have internet service at the camper all the time. And we don't have to worry about it draining the battery because the solar usually keeps it charged. And that's really that, and the internet is all you need to have these cameras. So I was thinking, I had some extra Blink cameras laying around that we got on a sale, and I was like, I'd really like to mount them. And I've saw people do it different ways. I see some people that take them down whenever they travel, and some people that don't, and some people that use the original mounts. I know I was watching watched a few different ways people did this before I decided to go through with it. And I know like Todd on Switch It Up used the factory mount, said he put a little bit of silicone on there to kind of give it a little extra holding power. I wasn't quite that comfortable with leaving them on there. And so I went with a mount off of Amazon that I found that seemed to be the most secure. And truthfully, for the most part, I like the mounts and they work great. There's a couple of places where I wish it was built a little bit better, and we'll get into it in just a second. So really, all I have to do is mount the cameras up where I want them because we already have the little Blink module in the camper, and so all you have to do is just adding that extra camera at home. So the first step when I get these cameras out is to put the batteries in and add them to our system. So one thing that I would watch out for when you're mounting the cameras is the first one that I inadvertently mounted just directly under the gutter drain. So you don't want to do that because water is just going to dump right on there. I was able to turn that around and use it for facing the rear. It's in the front passenger side of the camper. And so I was able to use that to point down. I like those camera angles better from the top that point down and show more around you. I wish my normal driving cameras were up that high, but they're not. I was able to turn around and make it work, but be cognizant of, the gutters and things like that whenever you're doing this. Now, after I got the camera, matched up to my Blink account, then I installed the mounts. And so the mounts that we got, like I say, they're off Amazon. I have a link in the description below. And in all the reviews on these mounts, the biggest complaint was the small screws that people talked about being about the size of screws in eyeglasses. And I was like, what's that talking about? Because they seem to be pretty beefy. Well, this mount comes with a housing that goes around the camera, which is one reason that I like this camera mount. And on the front of it, on the top, there's a little bit of a sun visor as well, which would come in handy in high sun situations. But there's 4 screws that hold those together around the camera. And those 4 screws are these tiny screws everybody talks about. And one of them, I'll say, it's like the first one that I did, I tightened down too much and it actually went through the housing and wasn't holding anything. So after that, I've learned my lesson and I went through and I just tightened them down a little bit at a time. And you can see kind of where it starts pulling the plastic together quite a bit, and I just left them there and didn't tighten them down too tight. And it seemed like that one that went through the plastic was still having a decent amount of holding power, so hopefully it won't give me any issues. Now, once you get that mounted, that's all of that process, but then you have to mount the actual mount on the camper, which it comes in 2 different pieces. And so the other piece is more of the leg with a tripod mount on it. And I'll say that it's pretty strong. It's got a ball joint there, that way you can aim the cameras however you want to. But there are 3 screws that are required in those. I have seen some that say that they use VHB tape. I didn't really trust VHB tape, and so I did use the screw-in options, which again, you're making more holes in the side of the camper and that can be an issue. But what I ended up doing was I used those mounts. I'd hold them on the side of the camper. I kind of used the camera on my phone, kind of saw where I wanted them to be, and after I got in that generalized area, again, making sure it's not like under the gutter or something like that, then I used my drill just to drill the screws in. And those screws weren't very sharp. It'd actually be better if you drill a pilot hole, but I didn't have my drill bits with me and I didn't want to go back and get them. So they slipped a couple times and made me say a couple of bad words, but we got them in there. So then I put all 3 of the screws in. Now the important thing is you just put three holes for each of these in the side of your camper. So after that, I took those back off and I used some Chemlink, some sealant, and I put inside the screw holes, and then I put the screws back in. I also used that Chemlink to put over the screw holes in the mounts, and then I used it to go over 90% of that camera mount, leaving the very bottom open. That way if some moisture does get in there, it can drain out. Now whenever I tightened those screws down, it did, before I added the extra Chemlink to the screw holes, it did squeeze a little bit of that out through the screw hole as well. And so I don't think that I'm going to have any issues with those leaking whatsoever. Now after that, you take that camera and you rotate it. It's got a threaded mount, looks like a tripod mount. You just rotate it right on that mount, which it was easier to do if you had that sticking straight out before you adjusted it sideways. Now with that, it seemed like it was pretty strong, but I'm still a little paranoid. So I got some orange thread sealant and put on there. The orange is supposed to be like decent thread sealant, but removable, because you're going to have to take this off anytime you got to change the batteries or anything like that. So I did use that, and then I tightened it down where I thought it should be, and then I really tightened down the main threaded region that holds that ball joint in half. Now I only used my hands to do that. I didn't use any pliers or anything because you don't want to break the plastic. But I did that to 3 separate cameras on this camper so far. So I got one that shows like the front yard of the camper. I got one on the backyard of the camper. Now the one on the back, I did mount to the slide because there's a bedroom slide there, and I figured if I put it in the front corner, it's just gonna show the slide whenever the slide's out. And so that'll show like the more of the behind the backyard of the camper. This will show more of the front yard of the camper. And then I have 2 on this side on the front. So the other one's more front facing, and it shows more anything in front of the camper. Now it won't show it if it's more on the like driver's side of the camper, because you know there is a little bit of a wall there. I didn't want to mount one like right on the front of the camper anyway, because that would be more of an issue with water intrusion. I didn't want it to be like directly in that front cap, if that makes any sense. The only place, and then we still have the doorbell here, and the only place that I don't have a camera is on the very back of the camper, which I only had 3 mounts, but I really don't think that it's necessary there. And a lot of people are like, well, you feel like it's necessary to have cameras? Well, we do a lot of like lot docking when we're doing cross-country trips and stuff, for one. So you get that knock on the door, which I think that the doorbell helps out with a lot, which we've never got the knock on the door, but you can see who's outside before you open the door. And if you have more cameras, you can have more of an awareness of what's going on around you, especially if you have the camera system armed and it's going off by motion sensors. You have more idea of what's going on around you than you do just opening the door just to see what's out there. Another reason is for security, like when it's parked, like I say, because we don't keep it at our house. And so I know if anybody's up messing with a camper, you know, my neighbors are good people, but some of the neighbors that we have, you know, down the road and stuff, it can be a little on the sketch side. So it's kind of nice to know. And my neighbor whose yard I park in, he has had a couple of things stolen out of his little garage area there. So it's nice, extra comfort for me to know just that, you know, I have an eye on things even if I'm not at home. So far, this is working out great. The one thing that I worried about is like driving at highway speeds. I wasn't worried with these mounts about the camera falling off so much, but I was worried. I used to have an old Jeep, and when you try to drive, it'd only go about 60, but the mirrors would fold in a little bit. So I kind of wondered if those mounts would adjust. But we've been on 2 separate trips. One, was a back highway. We only went like 55, 60 down. Didn't have any issue there. We're here in Cades Cove right now, which is about 2 hours from my house. Most of that's interstate driving, and still everything, I don't have internet service here where I can look, but everything seems to be mounted. The angles seem to be just the same. Didn't have any issues. All the cameras are still there. So I think that this is going to hold up great. One of our next trips is going to be to northern Michigan, so we'll definitely have a feel for how the old girl is going to do then. But thanks guys for watching this video. Thanks for being a part of our family, and be sure to tune in next week for our video as well.
Do not forget to hit that subscribe button.